Call this meeting to order. We on? We're good. Yeah. I'm gonna call this meeting to order for Polk County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Commissioner Gordon is excused. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Next up, looking for comments for items not on this agenda.
Election day, so you better get your ballot in if you want to count it.
John. Yes, plenty of time, lots of opportunity. Get your ballots in. Next up is approval of minutes of May 9th.
So I wasn't here May 9th, but after reviewing them, you can't make the motion.
Oh, so I will make the motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next up is our Oregon Department of Forestry update. Welcome, gentlemen. Please come forward.
Right, honey.
So for the record, please give us your name and titles.
All right, so for the record, my name is Michael Curran. I'm the district forester for ODF's West Oregon district.
And I'm Jeff Klassen. I'm the forester for Department of Forestry here in Dallas.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioner Pope, Commissioner Modhorst, and other county staff. So I believe you guys have a one pager from us, just our standard handout we give out every year with kind of just a reminder of a high level overview of everything we do as a district locally. Then on the back of that is our current chart. So in the past 14 months, we've had about a 50% turnover in our permanent staffing district, just due to all the promotional opportunities within the agency. And then also we had a couple folks retire after they've put in 30 plus years with the agency. So good news is, right, historically, we've had a lot of good folks that have the opportunity to promote and are doing good things, which is good, higher up in the agency, but it's left some pretty big fill as well. So I think so far we're back to full staffing, just working on getting folks fully trained up and oriented in their new role. And so far, I think everything's working good, but very high staffing. So on May 1st, state offices finally reopened after almost 2.5, 3 years. And I think it's been really good to get state offices open back up to the public, which has been good. I'd say our customer base is slowly making it back. And it's been good to see them all and go from there. So we are open back to the public like we were prior to COVID. So, and then also just want to, and I don't know the status of it, but just want to kind of mention just continued support for the Woods Patrol program that Polk County historically has. I'm not sure where you guys are at with staffing of that yet, or if something's been done to fill that position, but just want to make sure we mention our continued support between us and other industrial land in the county. So kind of moving on to different programs updates. We'll kind of start with protection and kind of a 2022 fire season update. Luckily, we only had about 47 acres burned, which is below our 10-year average of 306 acres burned. Fire season lasted a little longer than it does on average. We were in fire season for almost 110 days last summer. So with that, I'll go ahead and kick it to Jeff, and he'll talk about some fires in Polk County that we had last summer.
Yeah, so ended up with about 46 fire runs out of the Dallas office. Overall, our initial attack, Michael and I would describe as kind of light, just the amount of fire behavior. So pretty. So our biggest fire was an operation fire late in season, and it was about half an acre. And so we had a couple fires like Gooseneck Road area, about a quarter acre, and a couple others about that size, and everything else was quite small. So we were able to get things contained pretty quickly between our activity and fire departments. Arriving to quite a few of those before we do. So things got taken care of quickly. So that's good news. I would say, the Operation Fire was a good effort by the operator out there when they had that. They discovered it shortly after they had shut down for the day, and got a lot of aggressive work before we ever arrived on scene. So it was a deep woods. Think about that. So that's about the most exciting thing that also for locally.
I think really that fire highlights just the important relationship we have with the landowner community and our operator community, and how well prepared they are when it comes to fire prevention and having equipment on scene. So, and of the 47 acres burned, it was really tied to just two main fires we had, one in Benton County, and then Lincoln County that was last year. So, and then also just as a reminder, our top three causes for fires are tied to equipment use, debris burning, and recreation. Big question we get this time of year is what's the upcoming fire season going to be like? We were fortunate to have a fairly wet winter. I'd say well above average snowpack totals in most areas of the state, which is good. Oddly enough, though, we're actually below average in rainfall. We track between Salem and Eugene, we track rainfall totals through the National Weather Service. And in the Salem area, around 5 inches short. Where we are on average this time of year, and then down in Eugene up to 10 inches short of the average. But ultimately, for me, May and June are really going to dictate what fire season is going to be like. We're not off to a very good start. It looks like temps are going to come back down here over the next week, which is good, but not a lot of moisture. So ultimately, like I said, we're going to be seeing what moisture totals show us for May and June. I could envision a scenario, depending on how much rain we get, that we might be in fire season by mid-June potentially. And again, we're just going to see what the next few weeks of weather brings us. But if it does stay dry, I would say there's potential for a fairly significant fire season to pop up, for not only locally but statewide as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and Jeff will give an update on our fuel reduction grant program that we've got and the work going on locally.
We have we call our community wildfire force. I think we had a meeting a couple of years ago or a year ago. Anyway, this is fully tied to the grant that we've been able to successfully pull into the district. And locally here, we closed one grant in the Gooseneck area in Polk County in 22. So that was after we met last year. But they accomplished about 92 acres fuel reduction work. Particular grant. There's another grant we have out in Grand Ronde area that just closed in March. Our grants have been split between counties, so we were able to accomplish about 34 acres on that one, Grand Ronde. Now we had a little bit of a hard time getting folks interested in work out grant. Some areas just are more challenging than others, and that's why we have acreage to Benton County focused to have a lot of interest. So they got more activity. Overall, that grant closed out in March and exceeded goals for that. So we have another one out Fishback. It closes at the end of this year. We put in for an extension on that just to be able to complete it. I think it's about 70% expended at this point. So I'm not sure we'll end up closing by that. And then we put in another new grant for Liberty area. And we really haven't started a whole lot of work on that yet, but I'll be kicking off here pretty soon. We'll see where that ends up. And then in addition, last spring, went through some 762 projects that came up. They were offering some money. We were able to come up with a couple landowners that accomplished about 155 acres on the forest land. So the two landowners, as far as pretty much those turned out well. That's kind of a summary of the activity grant. Continually put in for grants. We just put in for another Western States grant not focused in Polk County, but continually support that we have here in Dallas working. And then we added another position to make sure we expand the grant district. So our forester engaged. You want to add to that? Nope. No reduction, focusing on roadways. Around home, so the primary thing is defensible space out from there.
We still use the label Firewise.
Yes.
All right. Continue to say that. I'm worried now. It's like, oh, maybe you guys have related that. Yeah.
That, the Firewise has been a successful program in some areas. It's hard, really got to get the community, got a couple of people that need that because it's hard.
Yeah, and I would say with Senate Bill 762 and the increased work that OSFM will be doing around fuels reduction and defensible space, maybe that term may change. I'm not sure, but for now, for sure, we are sticking with Firewise. So
Currently home. 39 or acre.
5 acres type thing.
And the perception that I've had in my years as a commissioner that folks over here on the west side, for the most part, don't relate, big wildfire issues, urban interface challenges to Polk County, Lincoln County, et cetera. And obviously the fire significant loss we had in the Otis area to reconvince them. But I'm curious about if those experiences here in Western Oregon are part of the marketing strategy for Firewise process, and if that's something that we all can use more of to convince funders that we need this program across the state, not just in the extreme dry areas.
yeah, yep, and we're so we do use that 2020 Labor Day event to kind of help show those types of fires do happen here on the west side. As an agency through 762, we've come up with this, and it's not final yet. I believe the first draft is out for review, but looking at this 20-year strategy across the state. And at least on my end, trying to do everything we can to make sure Northwest doesn't get lost in the fold with that strategy, because obviously the priorities are Southwest Oregon, Central Oregon, Northeast Oregon, and rightfully so, right? That's where a big chunk of the large fires are. But at the end of the day, right, we still, in the last 10 years or so, right, our fire was picking up the northwest part of the state. So I've been working locally within the agency to try to get Northwest not to kind of get lost in the mix there the best I can. But I think our grant program shows that we continue successful telling our story, that the risk is here, the threat's here for sure. We continue to get grants awarded to us, so that's good. So I think locally, we're doing everything we can to try to make sure that funding keeps coming in. And then we'll see moving forward with this 20-year strategy, kind of how we can make sure Northwest stays in the mix for future grant funding.
For the record, how to work this issuance file for these grants and get their place on the list for mitigation.
So typically we send out to the area. So when we put in for the grant, we got a target area. So create a map, show focus of we strategically try to sometimes it picks up people interested, but work. I want so and sell the times.
Well, we try to get out in front of public forums the best we can, certain communities around the county kind of together some part of those just to try to help variety of different things the best we can.
We pretty much, with our last grant there at Liberty, pretty much kind of a line through the urban interface area where we focus. Kind of covered the base.
And just a reminder for you commissioners, we're still active with County Forest Land Classification Committee. If you guys recall, and essentially what that committee is responsible for is ultimately determining who's receiving wildland fire protection in the county within our district boundary and who's not. We continue to meet annually, so Jeff can provide just kind of a quick update on that, so you guys are up to speed.
So our committee, December, so we met last December. We also invite usually the assessor to see what's changing in the county and where, and if that's going to affect any classification committees done in the past. So the work is good for 5 years, and we certify that. We certified it in 21, so the next 5-year review is 26. We also, Terry Lammers, his term ended December 31st, 22. So he is a commissioner appointed member. So what I'm hoping to do here is let you know that Terry is willing to continue. Terry is one of the original members of the committee, so he started. He's willing to continue about that as long as you guys are re-up. So I'm hoping I can get you included in. Get the copy.
I won't do it without a letter from him.
You want a letter from him?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, that's how I see it. If he wants to serve, he should tell us he wants to serve. And give us a summary at least of what his work has been. Yeah, so that we can put that on the record. Personally, how I feel about it. So I'm with you. Yeah, I've never been to it.
Yeah, no, that should be easy enough.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Thank you for your service for that. Yeah, absolutely.
In addition, next year, good. One of them original members.
As a reminder, if you guys have other folks in mind too that you think could serve on that committee, we'll go off what you guys recommend there. So, okay. With that, before we move on to state forests, Commissioner Pope, you had a question for me on the Senate Bill 762 wildfire risk map and county engagement plan. So as an agency, what we're doing, and I believe it's Senate Bill 80, that's kind of the wildfire risk map fix bill. I know one of the changes they're talking about, it's going to go to the hazard map, not a risk map. But we're going to wait to formulate our final plan on what that engagement plan looks like until the end of session, so we know exactly what the final language is in the bill and what's going to be required in it. But in talking with our policy staff in Salem that work for our protection division, they're already starting conversations and working closely with AOC on what that engagement plan may look like. And then they could be potentially utilizing the AOC's regional as a venue for that. Just speaking locally, from everything I'm understanding, there's not going to be a lot of changes, if any, locally for us from the original map that was laid out. And we actually had nothing in high or extreme to where anybody locally within West Oregon District wasn't going to be required to follow that were laid out in that wildfire risk map. So the impact locally should be none, if very low. So, but as it stands right now, our plan is to kind of work through AOC. And if you'd like, I can continue to keep you in the loop on anything that I hear.
Very aware of it, but
Okay.
I just needed you to say it for the record.
Okay.
I have been leading the legislative language.
Okay.
So as the Natural Resources Steering Committee co-chair.
Okay.
But I think the thing that's important following your statement there for the record is that irrespective of your opinion about whether or not things change in the wildfire hazard map, really used to saying risk. And I think that was a semantics issue, but it's politics. The bottom line is that there will be implications to new construction in the future, and that is more or less the intent of policy, is to change how we construct homes in the urban interface. So, and I think it'll spread across the entire district, whether it's just in an urban interface location. And so I think the thing that's important in all this is that for us as county commissioners across the state to at least be able to facilitate conversation in a public view about what that is and ask questions specific to that. So yeah, my original push for the agency was to have 36 individual meetings, and we got lots of pushback from your government affairs people. And I understand that because it's an expensive proposition to do that. So we conceded to, okay, well, let's do it by district meetings, AOC district meetings or something like that. So it was a little bit of a challenge for Jackson County, but I think we've overcome that and had a lot of politics and back and forth in the language of Senate Bill 80. But that Senate Bill 80, again, for the record, is supposed to be a fix to some of these issues that did not get done appropriately with 762. So I appreciate you answering that question on the record. So just for the public's knowledge, we are going to have some kind of process that you'll be able to come be a part of.
Yep, and keep me posted if there's something different you'd like to see there. I can try to do something on my end.
Well, I'm sure we're hearing the same thing simultaneously. So,
Okay.
But you're right. Until sign die, who knows what it is.
Yep. Okay. So moving on to our state forest program. So just as a reminder, locally there's two types of lands we manage for state forest. The first being the Board of Forestry. And we manage 6,020 acres in county of Board of Forestry lands. And just as a reminder, any revenue from those properties, 2/3 goes to the counties for that. Then we also manage common school land acres as well. And we've got a little over 1,700 acres. Essentially what those lands are for is any revenues from those go into the common school fund statewide. So we did just update our 10-year implementation plan and extended it for 2, potentially up to 3 years. State Forester Mukomoto signed those last month. And just a reminder with those, trying to work through kind of potential HCP adoption in our current forest management plan. One thing we ran into with our IP update is our revenue is slated to go down for the next couple of years. Locally for us,
The acronym there, you should, for the record, you should tell us what the acronym is, IP.
implementation plan, sorry. For us locally with our implementation plan, typically right now we harvest anywhere from 11 to 12 million feet, and we're slated to go down to around 9 to 10 feet locally. So not a huge impact for us within West Oregon district compared to other districts within Northwest Oregon area. So with that, just talking through some revenue updates for Polk County. Our FY22 revenue that was provided to the county was slightly over $430,000. And then revenue to date for current FY23 is sitting at $20,667. And looking forward into our AOP for FY24, which is currently open for public comment. We've got 2 partial sales in Polk County. One sale is 100% forestry land that is estimated to bring in a net cost of $33,788 to the county. And then the other sales all on common school land property. So those are kind of the 2 sales that we're looking at within Polk for FY24. So
I don't know what AOP means.
annual operations plan, sorry.
And I want to verify for you, for all of us, that my translation for Board of Forestry lands is County Forest Trust lands.
Yes.
Thank you. Correct. So I'd like to correct that. Hear that a lot in the BLM too with ONC. They call it BLM lands, not that.
So my apologies.
No worries. Just doing it again for the record for folks that are interested.
Yep, you're correct. So we continue to work on our Black Rock Trailhead planning. With our recent purchase of the Waco parcel that we have near the Black Rock. And ultimately the intent of that is to get the trailhead off of the Camp Attitude property. To where now the mountain bikers don't even have to go through the camp at all. They'll go right around it, which is a good thing. We're currently working through the parking lot design right now. And then next fall, we're hoping to get a contract out for an engineer to look at trying to get a bridge in place for the Luck. So bikers can go with that. So that's slowly moving forward. And then I know Commissioner Polk, we talked with you a little bit about a visitor monitoring study that we did on Black Rock. We just got the final report this winter, and I'll be sharing that with you soon. And based off some suggestions that you had, we included some questions to try to derive some economic data for as it pertains to the county. So that's included in this visitor use monitoring study. So, and when I send that to you, I will make sure to highlight the certain pages without both on, so you guys can have a quick reference for that. So, and we've been able to use that study to kind of help guide us for how many parking lots and how much space we need to create there at the new Black Rock Trailhead. So, and then Commissioner Pope, again, you had a few questions just kind of on the state forest HCP habitat conservation plan implementation. So, where we're at with that, so we are still currently working on the modeling for the new forest management plan that will be tied to the HCP if the forestry decides to adopt it. We were supposed to have that done in June. Found out that we need more time to get that done, and really the ultimate driver being is we want to make sure we have the best product available for the forestry to make an informed decision on if we should adopt the HCP or not. Originally, we were looking at a September Board of Forestry decision on the HCP. So they had some time to review the modeling. It's going to be tied to the forest management plan under it. But since we needed to extend the modeling timeline, the agency's looking at potentially a November decision date, but that's not finalized by any. So it sounds like the HCP decision is going to be pushed out further, just unknown on the time. So I think it's a good thing because it gives us time to ensure that the different modeling scenarios that we put together for this new forest management plan that'll be tied to it. We're, like I said, going back, we can make sure that there's the board can be making an informed decision based off the best available data that we can pull together. So, so a lot of just your questions around the financial impact to the Forest Development Fund over the next 5 years, 10 years, and the impact to the ODF force. We'll get a better picture of that once the modeling project is completed. And you and I have talked about this before, and it's definitely on my list to get in front of you. Be a better update once I've got some good numbers to work off of. With the planned impact to ODF workforce, internally, we are looking at what an organization looks like and staffing looks like under an HCP. And we're working with ICF. They're the contractor that helped us put together the habitat conservation plan to kind of help inform us on what a potential structure looks like under the HCP. And we're not done with that yet. We're going to be working on that through the summer to kind of figure out what that's going to look like. And then the other question you had on what with the expected financial shortfall of the HCP, what's the plan to maintain ODF firefighting priorities? Tough one to answer right now. As you're probably aware, right, we utilize what we call the militia model when it comes to firefighting within the agency. So if there are impacts to force, then yeah, that could potentially impact firefighting activities depending on if we do staff or something like that. But again, tough to answer right now just because what that's ultimately going to look like for us yet. So here, hopefully in the next 3-4 months, maybe longer, we'll have a better picture for what that will look like. So did that help? I know I didn't really answer anything for you, but
and these questions that I posed for you were based on the current modeling that has been presented to of the interested parties, including Port Forestry, which were significantly lower harvest numbers than we all thought they were going to be initially. And the three of us have talked about that, what we believed it should be, and then under the HCP, what the staff modeling was presented as, apparently, and I'm guessing there's a little bit of political pressure even from forestry members that have seen those numbers and have a couple of them and have actually been very outspoken by saying, you're going to go broke. You're already going, but you're going to go a lot faster with these numbers because the Forest Development Fund, for the record, is what powers the engine of the department. And so for all of us that have not only sustained yield management interests in mind, but how do we maintain a fire agency that has deep responsibilities across the state? And not just for state-owned lands, but for federally owned lands as well. And so some of us that are engaged in this policy work are very worried about this and could project that some of the first things to get cut and that will likely put pressure on legislators to fund it a different way are going to be firefighting. And that's the worry and the tragedy. So I don't know how remodeling this is going to work. Because again, we know those of us that work in this policy arena know what the HCP is going to do to harvest levels, period. I mean, it's a harvest land-based issue that we're talking about. So you're going to cut less trees. I don't know how you get around that under that plan. And so I worry, not picking on you guys, but I worry that we're dolling it up here. We're dressing it up, the numbers and the model to somehow move this really significant policy package forward on our state forest lands. And we all right here are talking about the best production lands for fir trees in the state, maybe in the nation. And we're going to throw another wet towel on it. So I'm worried about how we fund all of your jobs that are absolutely essential in order to maintain those lands, firefighting and forest management. So I just wanted to make sure to give you guys some opportunity. I know that you have a hand over top of you, keeping you talking about the things that I'd like you to answer. But you are our Western region representative, and I think it's important that we hear from you that what I believe is strife in the agency from some of you that are in the field saying, and we know what these hazards could look like going forward under this policy plan. So for some of us, me specifically here in Polk County, I don't like the HCP. I don't like the direction of the implementation plan. We've had our own professionals with County Forest Trust lands argue about the data. And I think our people's numbers are good. And it doesn't look like the agency and the Board of Forestry is going to come anywhere near to meet us in an argument. So anyway, I just think it's important we keep asking from you guys, what's the plan when you have less money? How are you going to do that? And I know that there are some folks out there saying, well, again, we'll push this over to the legislature, let them figure out how to fund us out of the general fund. I don't think that's going to be very successful, but unless there's a big tragedy.
Yeah. Well, there's been those talks, and I'm not quite sure what the status of those are. I know those conversations were happening early on in the legislature, but on the fire funding piece, I know there's still continued discussions of trying to come up with a long-term solution on a fire funding fix for the agency, both for initial attack and large fire. Again, there's a lot of different conversations. Don't know what the final plan for is going to be for coming up with what that fix may look like, but I know there's interest for some legislators, some constituents in the agency as well. So we'll see what that will be.
And before we leave this, just the firefighting subject alone, so I learned just a few weeks ago that, that our forester, chose to drop the what's funded insurance. And so what's gonna be the backup plan if we have a huge fire season again in Oregon this summer and fall? Where's the balance of the money come from to cover the shortfall? Because what are we covered under for the state? 25 million?
25 million. And so a little bit of background on that. If I'm tracking the numbers correctly, so I believe the deductible was 78 million this year, which is actually higher than what our 10-year average large fire cost is actually. And that ultimately led to the decision by the recommendation from the Emergency Fire Cost Committee to State Forest to not purchase it this year. And I believe it's a $4 million policy purchase. And just ultimately felt that money could be used elsewhere just based off the amount of the deductible and what it based this year, because it's been increasing for the past however many years, just to increase costs from the fire season. Us having to dip in periodically. So, but yeah, everything would come back to the general fund once we get to that level, the large fire costs, because we have our base costs in the emergency fire Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund, but that only goes up to 20 and everything from there. So, and there's potential with us turning it down this year that we may not get it again next year. I know the agency is going to try potentially just to see what conversations are like, but we also knew that risk going into it, that if we did turn it down, there's definitely an offset. We may not how conversations go. So, but yes, you are correct that we did turn it down this year.
Yeah, my political position on this is that this was risky business, given that we're trying to develop a policy in this state of less harvest and more growth. And that to me equals bigger fires and more of them. And so again, our general fund in this state and first through Forest Development Fund and the agency, there will be impacts across the board here. And any of us running business would know that we don't turn down the option regardless of the deductible. We don't turn down options for some backup insurance. So I think that there's a lot of risk. Again, if we were doing more on the management side and cutting trees, building roads, etc., to make certain that we had plenty of access for your guys to be able to do what they do wonderfully, I would be less concerned that going the other direction. And not your fault. I just want to make certain that I editorialize that from my work in the policy realm with forestry, and where I see those concerns.
Okay. Yep. And I wrote it down, and those are some thoughts I can share with our state forester moving forward. So he's tracking concerns that folks have. So
While we're talking about funding stuff, where I grew up, our Forest Service was the largest employer within the region by far. Page Falls Schooling, public safety was all funded through timber harvest. Now they're looking for federal funding, needing enough money to meet their needs for run the area because the harvest has gotten so low. And I see Oregon following the exact same path. So at what percentage do you know the Forest Service is now self-funded by money that you generate versus how much you need from the general fund or federal assistance? Do you have any idea?
So you asked him about Forest Service.
yeah, I'm sorry.
You want him to answer ODF?
With ODF,
Okay.
Department of Forestry, where are you at self-sustaining funding? And then what are you looking at to need? What's the shortfall?
Yeah. So that's what, when we work through our updated modeling process and kind of that HCP organization looks like for us, that's where we're going to kind of get answers to those types of questions. We're not there yet. Right now, we are solely funded through the Forest Development Fund from the state forest perspective. And we can continue to work that way, but depending on this new modeling effort for us to be in place, that's ultimately going to help us be able to answer those types of questions and figure out what that threshold is for us. So again, more to come on it, but those are the types of questions that we should be able to answer. And we get our modeling effort completed. So But those are questions that folks have been asking us for a while now. So we're tracking those. We just need to get our updated one completed.
Do you have any idea where you're at on the current? Before the new?
I don't think I can answer that one right now without checking with somebody. I want to give you the right answer, not just get made up. So, okay. Okay. Anything else, State Forest, before we move on to Forest Resources? Okay. So just kind of a quick, I know we're going long here, so apologies, we'll try to speed this along here. So just a quick Forest Resources update. I'm sure you are tracking the private forest accord. And the substantial changes that have been made to the Oregon Forest Practices Act. So we've got stewardship foresters on the district, and their sole responsibility is ensuring that landowners or operators are following the Forest Practices Act whenever there's harvest occurring. And through the private forest accord, we've actually been able to add 2 additional positions to the district, which has been a good thing. So we've added 1 additional stewardship forester out of our Philomath unit, which puts us at 2 per unit. And then through the private forest accord, there's a subset of within it that are particularly tied to small forest landowners. So here them referred to as SFOs in the media. And those are any landowners that are 5,000 acres or less. And through the private forest accord, they wanted to have dedicated staffing just for small landowner types. So we've got 1 additional position that'll be solely for the purpose of working with small landowners when it comes to anything tied to the Oregon Forest Practices Act. So we're just got those folks hired a couple months ago. Again, just kind of going through the onboarding process and getting folks up to speed and things. But through the private forest accord, again, we're able to add a couple more staff with it, which hopefully will help increase our customer service to landowners and operators. So I'll give it to Jeff just to cover a couple forest resources topics. County.
Yeah, so our stewardship foresters county covered about 550 patients last year for Operation 500. That's their one. So, pretty significant work. That was actually down about 100 operations last year compared to some fluctuation, some there's always a little fluctuation. They also continue to stay pretty busy with NRCS help they find. So agreements with NRCS will help them out with some for some of our staff. So big in his area this year, but I think he's got 14 projects going on. I don't know. I think the last quarter, we have to report help them out. 56 delivered. So 56 different base projects. Keep track of on this 15. So it's fairly
So that's it for a local update. I just got a couple of statewide stuff I was going to cover if we've got time. If we don't, we can move on. I can just give an email update. Okay. So just to behind you. Okay. A couple of them we've already talked about with the insurance policy update and then kind of where we're at with the state forest HCP and FFP. So just a couple other things. One of them tied again to the private forest board implementation. So we've gone through the rulemaking and putting everything into that's all been done. Now we're kind of moving on to the implementation phase of it. And right now the big push is to get, get all of our staff trained up on the new rules, make sure they're good to go. And then also making a big push for external training for our landowners and operators. And those are just starting to get underway. But I think the agency's got a pretty good path forward here with a handful of trainings set up around the state just to make sure folks are in. And then we're doing everything we can, whether it's through small business association, OSU extension, to try to get out in front of folks and get training for it. I would mention there's been some recent misinformation as it pertains to small forest landowners and not being able to harvest any of their trees once the private forest accord goes into effect, which is not true. And we're working the best we can to get messaging out and working with O3, OFIC, AOL, just to make sure that, the small forest landowners have the best information in front of them. But just an awareness that there is some misinformation out there. So if you hear of anything like that, please forward those folks to us and do everything we can to make sure they're up to speed. But and I'm not quite sure how that's getting out there, but there's some folks that are thinking that if you're a small landowner, again, 5,000 acres or less, that you won't have the ability to harvest anymore with the private forest accord. And again, that's just not true. So, and yeah, if you guys do hear things locally, let us know and get us in touch with those folks, and we'll get them updated, educated on the news. So, and then just a big personnel change for us within Northwest Oregon area, which West Oregon falls under. Andy Fate, our longtime area director, has put in his time and retires the end of this month. And we have an area director. His name is Don Everingham, and he started May 1st, and just working on getting him up to speed. So Don's got a lot of time locally working in our state forest division. He actually spent some time at West Oregon District, so he knows the area really well. And then also was the assistant for a good amount of years as well. So he's coming into the job knowing a lot about our business, which is good. So, but just know that we've got new area leadership. So if there's ever a large fire in Polk County or something like that, then you'll probably see him around. Or if you guys want to have a meeting with him too, that's something I can work on, get set up if you guys are interested. So that's it for us. Unless you guys have questions. Apologies for going over.
Offices are now open.
Yep.
What percentage of employees are currently working in the office, and how many are still?
So all of our staff are working in the office. They'll be on occasion, if something's going on at home or something, somebody will be working at home, right? We're flexible with them, but everybody is working in the office, at least within our district. So.
So I have two. Can you tell me what the work foot value is today for timber in Oregon? We'll say fir in general.
Yeah, trying to think for our last sale in state forest, but that was a few months ago. We sold our last one, and I know it's gone up since then. I think we'll have to get back to you.
Yeah.
I think prices have recently changed, and I want to make sure I get the right thing.
Folks that are harvesting know that price is every day.
Yeah.
So surprise. Actually, you can't even give me a month's last month's price.
Yeah, there's what we hear from landowners different significantly. So not like I got called, but all that. I'm hard to give you just like a here's what it.
Yeah.
And then also, are you working with other forest agencies and power companies specific to their exposure or their exposure on lands you manage? Because again, I would tell you, I'm sure you know, there are lots of politicians out there right now that are trying to force major transmission lines underground. And they're also suggesting, I think the power distribution operations are all in favor of every time there's a windstorm, just like in the weather pattern we're in right now, to just shut it all down. And so I'm curious about what your experience is right now in working in that realm.
Yeah. So
This is a really big deal.
Yeah.
To citizens.
Yep. So we, I would say we have a more closer working relationship with our utility companies since Labor Day of 2020. We're not necessarily a regulatory agency for the utility companies. A lot of that's done through OPUC, the Oregon Public Utilities Commission, I believe is what they go by. And really where we step in is if there's certain fire restrictions that we have in place during fire season that they need to follow, whether it's having fire equipment on scene, they're doing right of declaring or certain activities tied to maintenance. But we do work closely with them on trying to identify kind of what priority areas there are for public safety power shutoffs on where we think there's the highest risk from wildland fire. So we try to work with them in those areas the best we can. And then we also work with them every preseason just on making sure they're aware of the fire restrictions and what we require of them during fire season. We're not necessarily we talk with them about kind of right of way clearing standards and things like that, but again, we're not a really regulatory agency for that. So we're just there to make sure that they do everything they can. They're working on those types of activities, that they have the right equipment in place just to ensure that if a fire were to start during those activities, that they can put it out. But that's kind of where we've been at.
Reached out to us and asked what are our priorities for wildfire. And so when they initially started doing the PSPS thing, focused on Portland. So my input to and our input, not just our district, but Grove District, districts North Cascade, we have a lot of areas concerned about wildfire in the Portland area. Just because of access, the structure there versus so we actually have and look at their maps today. Shut off enclosures. Focus.
And we also, some of the power companies are investing in like detection camera equipment that they've given us access to things just so we can view well. So again, just a different type of arena we'll put them in, just not necessarily on the regulatory side.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We have non-listed items.
Me, sir.
Seeing nothing further, we are adjourned.